It's 1978, and the million-selling high-water mark for one of the decade's most underrated singer-songwriters is climbing charts across the world.
Baker Street sounds to me like being in the city at night, a little bit exciting, but a little bit sort of melancholy at the same time.
Sax solos can really make a record, I think. The one on Baker Street is probably the most recognisable of all time.
It's a marvellous piece of songwriting, but I think it would be true to say that Gerry Rafferty is overlooked, partly because he didn't play the game.
The man, best known for his song about a street in London, NW1, began life in Paisley, PA1, on the outskirts of Glasgow.
Gerry Rafferty was a wonderful musician. He came from a folk background. He was the type of person that could walk into a room, pick up a guitar, and play the most wonderful collection of traditional music and touch people with that performance.
Gerry's first big break was in a folk duo with a future comedy legend.
Gerry Rafferty is an artist that I became aware of in the early 70s, when he had this band with Billy Connolly called the Humble Bumps.
At first glance, it seemed a kind of odd couple, but I saw them perform many times, and it was there was a real connection between them.
Gerry did the more serious songs, and Billy kind of had a huge ability in terms of entertaining people and making them laugh.
2 years after the Humble Bums called it a day, Gerry unexpectedly found himself in the charts alongside his friend Joe Egan in Stealers Wheel, with a catchy Bob Dylan-esque song called Stuck in the Middle with You. Although when the band released a pioneering early 70s promo film for the song, there was someone clearly missing. While the very much of its time video follows the song's lyrics literally with a clown to the left and a joker to the right, Gerry Rafferty, lead vocalist on the track, was strangely absent, leaving bandmate Joe Egan to step in for this joyful lip-sync job. At the time that this quirky promo was filmed, Gerry had temporarily left the band, dissatisfied with elements of the music business, including the lavish parties the satirical video poked fun at. These scenes were partly inspired by real-life events.
Stuck in the Middle with You bounced off a dinner that was organised by our managers and our record companies. I particularly remember the producers to one side that nobody was going to work with, but they decided to leg along. At the other end of the table, our managers were having a business conversation. And then there was the bad lads in the middle. And Gerry and Joe turned that incident into that absolutely terrific song.
For Gerry, after rejoining the band, the big downside to scoring a hit was having to go out and plug it, something he didn't seem to enjoy.
I remember watching him do Stuck in the Middle with You. And in a Top of the Pops world then that was full of people like Noddy Holder and Mark Bolan and these larger-than-life figures in mirrored top hats, he just looked kind of ill at ease.
He did play dates, but it wasn't like what became the norm, because I don't think he stood for the industry in any way.
He didn't write the songs to become famous. He was more comfortable writing songs and recording songs than he was in performing them.
After Stealers Wheel finally broke up in 1975, legal disputes meant that Gerry was contractually unable to release any recordings for 3 years. But when he re-emerged as a solo artist, he was even more publicity shy than before.
He told me flat out, he said, I just want to play music and sing songs to my kid. I'm never going to tour. I don't want my record company exploiting my records. So telling him if he goes to this radio station and does an interview he's going to sell so many albums, he wouldn't go. It was like self-destruct.
But then, in 1978, against all odds, Gerry's loathing of the music business would inspire one of the best-loved songs of the 70s.
The strange twist in that tale is the fact that he only seemed to be able to have enormous hit singles with songs about how much he disliked aspects of the music industry. It happened with Stuck in the Middle with You. And then it happened again later on with Baker Street.
Gerry was very much a songwriter in the moment. It was mostly about what he was going through at the time. You know, there's almost a diary element to them.
Winding your way down on Baker Street, lighting your head and dead on your feet well enough.
He wrote Baker Street when he was still trying to sort of extricate himself from the contract that he was under when he was in Stealers Wheel. He was shuttling back and forth a lot of the time between his house in Paisley and he was staying with a friend who lived in Baker Street in London.
And it's taken you so long to find out you were wrong when you thought it held everything.
So there's a kind of truth in it. That's truth with a capital T because, you know, Gerry's lyric writing was all to do with experience and his feelings.
You're trying now.
While the killer hook for most songs is a catchy chorus, typically for the contrary Rafferty, Baker Street was different, as the bit of the song everyone remembers best is one of the greatest sax solos.
There's that point of the record when you know it's going to come in, and it's kind of what everybody waits for.
It's difficult to deliberately imbue something with atmosphere, but there's a great atmosphere created by that saxophone.
Everybody loves the saxophone solo, apart from the guy who did it, Ralph Ravenscroft, who was convinced he played it flat. Nobody else would have noticed that. I certainly have noticed that. You just think that saxophone solo is brilliant.
Legend has it that Ralph Ravenscroft was only paid a £27 session fee for his contribution. Then, even worse, a story would later emerge suggesting it wasn't even him who played it.
It's quite a persistent urban myth that it was actually former Blockbusters host Bob Holness that played the saxophone on Baker Street.
It was one of those things where you can say to people, hey, did you know who played saxophone on Baker Street? They go, no, it was Bob Holness.
Except it wasn't, and the source of this early example of fake news can be traced back to a young journalist on the New Musical Express.
I wanted to parody those tabloid newspaper things that say, did you know that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made structure that's visible from the moon? So I thought, let's do that about music, except obviously the thing was none of them were true. It was like, did you know Neil Tennant of the Pet Shop Boys is a fully qualified rugby league referee? Did you know David Bowie invented Connect 4? Which I have actually seen that one come back to me sometimes, but not as much as, did you know Bob Holness played the saxophone solo on Gerry Rafferty's Baker Street? And I just began to get people coming to me and saying, hey, you're into music, I'll tell you an interesting fact. Do you know who played the saxophone solo on Baker Street? Bob Holness, him off Blockbusters. I go, no, he didn't, I made that up.
But let's spare a thought for the man who played the second most famous solo on Baker Street.
Poor old Hugh Burns gets overlooked, really. He did a wonderful guitar solo.
Gerry was very, very meticulous about parts. He wasn't just concerned about the notes. He was concerned about the sonic quality of the guitar, the mood that it created.
The power of this solo was down to an unusual guitar setup.
I actually discovered that you could get some really interesting sounds by using 2 amplifiers instead of 1. It was just a happy accident.
Baker Street reached number 3 in 1978 and became Gerry's biggest hit. But forever shunning the promotional limelight while battling his demons, much of his work after that became buried treasure.
I think it would be true to say that he is overlooked in terms of the body of his work. There's a tremendous amount of stuff in his catalogue which never gets airplay, never gets much attention.
Gerry Gerry struggled with alcohol for many years and, following a long illness, passed away in 2011, aged 63.
I haven't had a friend quite like Gerry Rafferty. He holds a unique position in my life. I loved him dearly, and I love him still.